Marjorie Taylor Greene lets a Democrat witness really have it.
But I would like to remind, I'd like to remind everyone that while we're talking about white supremacy, Miss Spittleneck, you were talking about white supremacy.
It's Spitalnik.
Oh, I apologize, Spitalnik. Miss Spitalnik, while you were talking about white supremacist and abortion, I totally agree with you. There's a lot of white supremacists in the abortion movement and abortionists because they have murdered over 20 million black babies in America since Roe versus Wade in 1973. That's on average 900 black babies are aborted. They're ripped apart inside their mother's wombs. So I would agree with you. That could be labeled white supremacy, or we could just label it murder. And it should never be happening. So if you want to talk about white supremacy and the abortion movement, you should really analyze that in your human rights groups that you run as you collect donations from people with your nonprofit. Because I think that is something extremely important to talk about, is the right for those black babies to have lives as American citizens, the right for them to be born, the right for them to be given a chance to live as free Americans instead of murder. You think this is funny, Ms. Spitalnik? Is this funny to you? Is babies being murdered in the womb funny to you? Because you're smirking and laughing at me right now.
What's not funny are the black people and Hispanic people and Jewish people and Muslim people who have been murdered in synagogue, in church, in supermarkets, in mosques by white supremacists.
Are you aware that all colored people are murdered? That is a fact, that every single color person has been murdered. That's not unusual. It's not just that people of color are murdered. White people are murdered too. Murder is not just for minorities. That may be a shock to you because you seem to dive deeply into all kinds of misinformation and seem to be uninformed yourself. But if you're going to talk about white supremacy and abortion, you need to study very hard about who the targets are. And it's not just black women, and it's not just black babies, it's Hispanics as well. And I think that's important for you to understand. And if you apparently care about human rights and you care about studying extremism, let's have a little talk about extremism, shall we? I think that's important because that's what this hearing is all about. I'd like to inform you, or maybe you don't know, maybe you do know, I doubt it. You mostly care about white supremacists and white-wing extremism. But there's quite a pattern of left-wing violent protests on college campuses today. Miss Gaines here was a victim of it. Do you support what they did to Miss Gaines? These trans terrorists chasing her into a room, do you support their movement?
I am absolutely sorry that Ms. Gaines felt threatened and unsafe while she was on a college campus, and that's not acceptable. But again, the statistics tell us that when it comes to politically motivated violence, in 2022, every single murder was committed by a right-wing extremist.
Every single murder in America was committed by a right-wing extremist?
Every single politically motivated murder was committed by a right-wing extremist.
Are you sure about that?
You know, this clip is amazing because Marjorie Taylor Greene is always beyond savage. She always just knows how to say, and not exactly the right way to say it sometimes, but that's why it's so powerful. And she's talking about white supremacy, right? This witness is trying, just like many Democrats do, white supremacy is the biggest threat to our democracy, and we all know that that's not the truth. We know that. But let's talk about exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking about here. In the abortion movement, there are a lot of white supremacists. Margaret Sanger, who was one of the founders, of Planned Parenthood, she was a eugenicist. She hated black people. She put these Planned Parenthoods, her goal was to put them in underserved black communities, would go into black churches and preach about the gospel of abortion. That's right. She wanted fewer black babies. If that is not an act of white supremacy, I don't know what is. It's the typical liberal hypocrisy. And now you hear the left bloviating and talking about fundamental rights of abortion. Yay, killing babies, they say. It's really, really sick. And anyone who is still making their decisions in November based upon abortion, let me just remind you that we are at war with Israel. Anti-Semitism is raging in this country. We have a migration, an invasion of illegals into this country who are killing innocent women and children. And a part of this invasion is sex trafficking, rape of women, fentanyl pouring across our border into all 50 states. So if you're still worried about abortion, you're probably the same person who thinks that white supremacy is the biggest threat to our democracy. So you know what? I think she's talking to all of these people, Marjorie Taylor Greene here, not just this Democrat hostile witness who's more concerned with the pronunciation of her last name.